Objective of this video is to describe the modern web application architecture and also what are the essential features and components which helps us to build modern web applications. First, we have to identify what all are the important features that are essential for web applications and that we can discuss using features of web architecture. First important feature is cross-platform. It means irrespective of where it is built, where it is deployed, access to that application should be similar to all different clients. And that is what should be part of any web architecture. When you are designing a web architecture, you need to ensure that you focus on cross-platform accessibility of that particular application. Second important feature of web architecture is it should be modular in nature and it should be loosely coupled. Benefit that modularity brings in is the simplicity in the application when it comes to change management or adapting new modules to the application. So when you modularize your application, you can divide functionality into various modules and you can enhance the reusability feature. Loosely coupled makes your application less dependent on each other, making your modular strength better as compared to tightly coupled applications. Third important feature that your web architecture should always keep in mind is it should be testable and you should have capability of automating the test using various testing frameworks. Next important web architecture feature is it should be SPA. It should support single page applications so that you can bring in all the content in a single page, reducing or eliminating need of cross page navigation. And last feature that need to be adopted while building or designing web architecture is to ensure that development is simplified and developers can work in collaborated development environment. Now let's define web architectures and patterns. So there are four different web architectures which are present today or which can be followed while architecting your web application. First one is all-in-one application. It means all different components are embedded in a single application where you lose feature of modularity. Then you have entire architecture where you divide functionality into number of tiers, dedicating responsibility of each tier to do some kind of functionality. Then third one is clean architecture and onion architecture. Clean architecture enhances capability of having a clean architecture in terms of dividing the component into various stacks and then collaborating all the components together. That's what is benefit of clean architecture. Then you have onion architecture where you go with multi-layered but those layers are coupled with each other. So depending on your need, you can go and you can decide what web architecture you are going to follow. Other important element that you need to keep in mind is the pattern that you want to follow to build your application. There are multiple different patterns which are identified for building the architecture of web application. Three popular patterns are MVC, where you have model view controller pattern, you have MVVM pattern, which stands for model view model pattern, and MVP pattern stands for model view presentation pattern. Difference between these patterns can be evaluated depending on how actually components are aligned. So for example, when we talk about MVC, three important components are model, controller and view, where view is something which is meant for end user who will be navigating your application. Model contains data and it takes responsibility of managing or representing the data. And then you have controller which takes responsibility of intercepting incoming request and then processing the data before it makes it available to the user in the next view. When we talk about MVP, you will have an important component called controller which is replaced by presenter. where responsibility of model again is to have set of classes that defines data and the business logic. You will have view, which takes responsibility of directly interacting and presenting the content in form of logical representation like XML or fragments. And then you have final presenter, which takes responsibility of taking the data and making it available to the user using view. Then you have third pattern, which is model view view model pattern. Fundamental benefit of model view view model pattern is it supports two-way binding between view and the model. It helps us to automatically propagate the changes which comes in view to the model, and in case if model changes, it can be reflected back to the view. So these are three important patterns which can be implemented, which can be adopted by us in order to define architecture of our web application. Now let's focus on important web application layer. You will have three different layers where each layer represents some logical separation within the application. You will have physical distribution of various processes and servers. You can also do separation depending on the physical deployment, where each target can be referred as a tier, and you can also have n layer application which can be deployed in a single tier. Typical components of application layer are user interface to interact with the user, business logic to go and transform the data and make it important for projection to the user, and third is data, which takes responsibility of managing the entire data which has to be transformed using business logic into information. Then you'll have clean architecture. Objective of clean architecture is to ensure that it provides you a layer which is independent of any framework. You're not tightly coupled with framework. You can define business rules, and these business rules can be tested without having any UI or any other element. UI can change, or you can go and transform and build an entirely different UI without changing the rest of the system. So tomorrow, if you want to bring up your application providing a different interface like mobile, you don't need to change the entire system. You need to just change the UI layer. So clean architecture provides benefit of reusing entire component whenever change is required in one of them. In this video, we discussed about components and different type of patterns and in order to build architectures of web application.